last Friday, my man I was about to say my man BeatStars, my man Dream Life. If you know, you know that I collaborate with Dream Life all the time. He just came out with his beat tape, and that's entitled "As the Night Falls." Go check it out. It's what we call, I guess, what people are calling lo-fi, but it's just really good music. And cool. The link is in the chat. Definitely support that. He is one of us. He's actually someone that one of those members of the BeatStars community that helped me become, who I am today. Also, sign up for text reminders because there's a lot going on in the BeatStars universe. There are live shows, there are summits, seminars, all that stuff. BeatStars.world/live. I'm sure that link is going to end up in the chat. And I also want to shout out another BeatStars member, Angel Ray. I am right now wearing her new shirt. So shout out to her. Shout out to all the producers that are merchandising. You can actually merchandise on BeatStars with one of their integrations. Maybe someone will magically post a link to the merchandise integration. But today I'm excited. I wanted to start early because we have a really important topic today and also a very important guest, Adam Freedman, who is an attorney and who has specialized in advocating for producers and representing producers in legal situations. If you have not followed him on Twitter, I don't know what you're doing with your lives, because it's some of the most informative, and it's like a reality show. It really is. All the heartfelt moments, all the dramatic moments, but then there's this also highly informative component to it. So let me just welcome Adam Freedman. How are you feeling?
Hey, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I know you've been super busy, so I appreciate you taking an hour out of your day to talk to the community here. So this is an interactive Q&A. Yeah, I can hear you well, actually. You're pretty clear. There might be a delay. That's just something we got to deal with. But just to start with, I'll ask some softball questions, and then we'll get into the meat of the conversation, which is largely inspired by your tweets, or I should say largely sourced from your tweets, because there's never a dull moment on your Twitter feed. But how long have you been an attorney? Because you're a young guy.
Yeah, I've been an attorney for 5 years now. I worked for another firm for 2 years. I've been on my own now for 3 more years.
What made you decide to focus on representing producers?
I got into producers when I went out on my own first, sort of looking for clients. I was a hip hop fan, and I figured that producers were a pretty underserved community. I started reaching out, and that was right. No one had ever just really cared about producers before, I guess, from the legal side.
Got it. Let's start off with something positive. What are some recent accomplishments you helped your clients achieve that you're proud of?
A lot of my clients are getting to the point where I've been working with them for a couple of years, and a lot of them are signing these big major pub deals and getting in the position of these life-changing opportunities to work with big artists that they never thought they would before, which has been amazing. And get life-changing money, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of your clients just recently received a double platinum plaque.
Yeah, I think that was Sonic for the Roddy Ricch album, which is going double platinum, which just got double platinum.
Yeah, congratulations on that. That's amazing. I know you did tweet something to the effect of it's amazing how many of your clients are experiencing these life-changing moments. And so, ultimately, things are going well. That's a really positive outlook for both attorney and client, right?
Yep.
So I had a nightmare with my very first major placement. I don't think that my attorney cared about producers. He certainly didn't care about me. How do producers find a good lawyer that actually understands and respects what they do?
I think one of the biggest things is to ask how busy the attorneys are. Are they working on? A lot of people will choose to go with a big dog attorney with a couple of big name clients, but is that attorney going to answer your emails while he's working on these other big big matters. What other sorts of clients are they working with? Basically things like that, sort of more personal questions, because someone told me when I was early as an attorney that it's not that hard to be a good attorney. All attorneys can read these contracts, but it's really who's going to have your back when it comes down to it.
So what's a good strategy to, I guess, network and start these conversations with these attorneys? How do you even go about finding one?
Oh man, that's a hard question, because it seems like myself and Carl Falks are really the only attorneys that are really putting themselves out there for producers. But there's a ton out there. I mean, if you meet an attorney, ask the attorney for other attorneys, because they know a ton. They shouldn't have any problem giving you other recommendations. And if so,
Yes.
that's actually a big red flag.
True. Okay, so here's the question I want to ask you. Why don't advances ever seem to get paid in advance?
There's a lot of reasons. A lot of them are because these rappers are turning in their albums a couple of days before they actually come out. So there's just objectively not enough time to get all the paperwork done and everything sorted beforehand. But I mean, why is that? Why can they just get things sorted a couple weeks beforehand? I don't have a good answer for that. Or just label incompetence. These major labels have so many people working at them. So to get from the A&R who's actually working on the project to the payment department can be a whole thing. Could just take a while by the nature of the companies.
I know you've talked about this at length, and maybe compared it to other industries. So, for example, there are these gigantic companies that are as big or maybe even bigger than other labels, and employees still tend to get paid on time. They have an HR department for that. They have accountants. They have all of these systems that make sure payments are made on time. I feel like in any other industry, if employees or workers or contracted labor were consistently not getting paid on time and by these egregious amounts of time, like months to years, there would be a lot of outrage. But somehow that has just become normalized in the music business, has it not?
I mean, that is like the question that you're getting at. Like, how did the music industry get so complicated the way it is? That's the question.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wish I had a good answer.
Okay, so we're talking right now about obviously big labels and getting placements with labels, whether they're big independent labels or major labels, and those are big systems. You get larger advances. What about selling beats online to unsigned artists? This is a conversation that comes up a lot, and a lot of recording artists and producers will assert that beats should be given away freely in exchange for what they call back-end royalties. I'm sure you've heard that. What's your opinion on that idea?
Well, I mean, I see both sides of it, but beats shouldn't be given away for free, if only because producers will then have to wait like 6 months to see the first royalty payment, so they could just see a payment now versus having to wait to see the fruits of their labor ultimately. And then, I think it ultimately comes down to like a respect thing. It's paying for your work at the end of the day. If someone says, no, I need your work for free, how much they really value you.
Here's a quick question, because this pertains to you. Is it possible to pay a fee to keep a lawyer on retainer just in case? Is that something that you would do? How does that usually work when producers are being represented by an attorney such as yourself?
So the way I work is I actually typically bill hourly against a retainer. I have clients deposit a retainer that basically I bill against. They're basically pre-depositing money with me. And anything we don't use can be returned, but that's basically to have me on retainer and just to reach out anytime I have an issue or something come in. Or other attorneys will work for a percentage basis, a percentage of all of your deals that come in.
Let's talk about something really tricky related to advances with these labels, and that's recoupment. And that's a concept that I think a lot of producers don't even understand. So maybe you can provide a clearer explanation. What is recoupment?
Recoupment is basically when you get an advance, it's an advance against the royalties that you're generating. So what they're paying you, basically they have to make back before you see another dollar.
Why is that so tricky? Seems like an easy concept, right?
Why don't people understand that?
No, I mean, it's very. I'll put it this way. That basically means if they pay you 10,000 and your royalties that you generate are 20,000, you would get 10,000 back in theory, but that's not always the case. That's almost never the case. There's some kind of tricky math that goes into recoupment and how much a producer gets and how much an artist gets in royalties, and where's the confusion?
Got it. So basically, without even getting too deep into the weeds, the biggest thing that even I had to see for myself is that producers are only recouping at their royalty rates, at the 3% or the 1%. So 1% of every stream, 1% of the 0.001 cents is actually going to you, while the label going towards recouping your advance, while the label is just pocketing the rest the entire time. And artists
Then there's
with major. Go ahead.
No, I think you even tweeted something this morning where you were talking about how confusing royalty statements from the labels are and what they're charging and what they're recouping, and it's not just that. It seems like it's not just that they're giving you. So for example, my first major placement, this was really before streaming took off, and I've still never gotten a royalty check for that, because granted, some of it was sample clearance, so that is something that they're charging against my account. But then there were other fees like recording and all these other things that didn't seem fair to charge against me as the person who made the beat. Do you see a lot of that?
Absolutely. A lot of times producers not only have to stand behind, so that's sort of the next step besides just recouping at the producer's royalty rate, is that you're also standing behind either the artist cost for the one song you produce, or a lot of the times the entire album. And I mean, that's another thing that I had to experience for myself. So a lot of times you have to stand behind the cost of the entire album. So the artist is only recouping at his royalty rate, and he may have spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, or even just paying bigger name producers than you, paying Southside or Metro, or paying them $50,000. So they need to recoup $50,000 before you're going to see another dollar, no matter what your advance was, which just makes it a lot less likely to happen.
Is that always clear when you sign a contract?
It's in there ultimately, but I mean, it's buried in the royalties section.
So when you see that in an agreement for one of your clients, how do you tend to respond? Is that something that you've had luck pushing back against?
It sort of depends. A lot of the times, recently I've had surprisingly good luck just asking for that. Why do I have to stand behind the cost of the whole album? And they usually will agree to changing that, or I'll ask for a higher fee because we're never going to see any back in royalties if you have to stand behind the whole album.
Yes. I had this conversation on the unsigned artist level with Dame, because it's, at least with a major placement, you're getting an advance. And when you're talking, creator to creator, producer to artist, neither of you are signed, and you're kind of trying to negotiate for like a $49 beat license.
Right.
There's often this trap. I'm calling it a trap. That's my opinion, that a producer will fall in where the recording artist will say, well, just give me the beat for free. You're going to get back end royalties. However, statistically speaking, most songs never generate a cent in back end royalties. And so, going back to the original conversation, it's kind of like the same thing. You're never going to get your money back, but in this scenario, you don't get anything, period, because you're not getting an advance. So I guess from your standpoint, how should a producer navigate that situation when an artist asks them to give the beat for free in exchange for back ends? What should they know walking into that situation?
The biggest thing is to figure out how you're actually going to get paid For example, in pretty much every agreement you get, you're going to be paid semi-annually, twice a year, once every 6 months. But am I really going to rely on an artist to remember that he has to count to me on certain days? Most likely not. But a lot of these distributors allow for direct payments to third parties, direct payments to producers. So I would ask them, what distributor are they with? Can they add me to the DistroKid dashboard so I can see what's going on myself and get payments myself? Because then if so, it's not that bad. But if you're in a situation where the artist is getting paid, you have to rely on him to pay you. Yeah, it's most likely not happening.
And then, another thing too is I think a lot of people overestimate what they're making. I mean, I've gotten contacted by producers all the time saying, hey, this artist used my beat. They've already gotten, 3,000 streams. Why haven't I gotten a royalty check? What's the problem with that?
That 3,000 streams is just nothing. 3,000 streams at 0.01 cents is $1, maybe.
So it's clear that this business is convoluted and it's not easy to navigate. So let's get further into some of the more complicated stuff so we can make everyone's head spin a little more. So you tweeted recently, even though a bunch of clients produce gold and platinum songs, the one that generated the producer by far the most money was a song that was released independently, where he had a 10% net profit share instead of a typical 2 to 3% label royalty. What does that mean? You said a lot in that tweet.
So basically, instead of the situation that we were just talking about, where the producer is recouping at 3%, a net profit split means you get paid the same time as the artist gets paid instead of having to stand behind him. So basically, that had to get paid faster and a lot more. So instead of recouping just at his royalty rate, 100% of the money generated went towards recouping. So that's why everyone got paid faster.
So why would a label do this if it's costing them more money?
Labels don't do this. This was an artist who did it independently.
Oh, not with an independent label.
Right. Who just had it out on a distributor.
Okay. So it's easier, obviously, to do this with an individual creator rather than a whole label system.
Right.
Do you think we could ever get to the point where we change the standards for a fairer system with any of these labels, even if we start at maybe an independent level and move from there? Do you think these systems can ever change?
Oh man, that's a deep question. I think they can, but I think people have to start applying pressure. I think it needs to start at, for example, producers and artists too, not being okay with getting paid 3 months later and things like that, because it doesn't apply in any other industry, like we talked about.
Let me just jump to this question then, because you take a really unapologetic and aggressive approach. Is that fair to say, to legal representation and negotiation?
Sure.
Well, I don't want to misrepresent what you do, because I just read the tweets and it seems like you're just, kind of like the gangster attorney when it comes to
I appreciate it. I appreciate that, but it's more about what other attorneys aren't doing out there. That's sort of been more surprising to me.
So your stance is that you're doing what you should be doing, and the only reason it seems more aggressive is because other attorneys are just softballing it.
Yeah, or artists themselves or producers themselves not hounding these labels.
Okay, so then I'll rephrase it then. You take an unapologetic approach. I'll leave the word
Fair
aggressive
enough.
out of that. And you're public about it. And a lot of producers, to speak to what you just said, a lot of producers are afraid to make enemies in the game and get blackballed from the music business. You clearly don't worry about that. When producers and their legal representation stands up and demands fair treatment during these negotiations processes, do bad things happen to them? Do they get blackballed? Do they get talked about in the business?
See, it's a lot easier for me to do that than the producers themselves. because these are their relationships, they're not mine. Like, there's nothing they could do to blackball me as the lawyer. So I understand why producers are scared of hurting those relationships, and ultimately my clients had to bite all those bullets and learn all those lessons for years, and now they're in the position where they don't have to anymore, and it's amazing.
So that, I guess that's one of the many benefits of having a lawyer represent you, right? That the artist's reputation isn't at stake. It's really more the lawyer.
Right.
So actually, let me
like ideally producers shouldn't be talking about money with the artist directly. They should be leaving it up to their teams in an ideal world.
Yeah, because otherwise, if the negotiations go, and I personally think that most producers aren't good advocates for themselves.
Right. Just overly humble or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, humble, paying dues, trying to make friends, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question that's coming in on the chat from Bufo. Thank God this is an appropriate question. Is there such thing as a good publishing deal for a producer from your perspective?
Is there ever a good thing? I mean, yeah, definitely. It depends. I mean, could you use a big advance from one of these companies? Could you use more people trying to put you in more opportunities to get you more songs? Of course, and they deserve a percentage for that work. It's more of a matter of if the company you're signing with is going to do a good job, rather than the deal themselves being poorly, being not favorable. I've found.
So I guess I'll follow that up by asking what are some, I mean, because you had a lot of your clients sign publishing deals, and I'm sure you considered those publishing deals as good. What were some points from those deals that made them good for your clients?
So basically, the size of the advance, the term, how long the companies collect money for. So in these big publishing deals where these producers are getting 6-7 figure advances, a lot of time the company will collect on your songs forever, rather than only for a couple of years. So I mean, limiting that term so you could move your songs to another company to get another advance, just to have that flexibility can really help.
Got it. You witnessed a situation in which a brand new producer got his first placement, but the song was released without the label paying him, and then somehow the song went platinum and the producer still hadn't gotten paid and still hadn't gotten a contract. So what happened next with that scenario? Was that producer in a good position, bad position?
Well, so if your song does well and you haven't been paid, that actually gives you more leverage than if the song wasn't doing well, because the artist or label really wants that song to stay up. So they'll do whatever they can to have it stay up, keep making money off it. So ultimately, with this story you're talking about, the kid reached out to me. He was really too humble or shy, or whatever you want to call it, to really make a stink about it. And that's really all it took, is just making a stink about it. How can this guy not have been paid for the song? He clearly did it. And that's what got it done. It's really no secret. It's just, don't be afraid to hound people. That's really my biggest piece of advice. Don't be afraid to follow up.
So when somebody hires you at that stage, is that a lot of what your job entails? Just really following
literally following up and calling them and bugging the shit out of them. But it's ultimately for things that are super simple. So I'm not opposed to it.
So we have a related question from somebody who says that they produced a song on an album for Interscope. I have a similar story. I'm not going to tell it. It's been out for 7 months, and he's wondering about collecting his royalties from I have a lot of questions about this question, actually.
Yeah, I mean, this is really what I've been diving into recently, especially dealing with Interscope and UMG related labels. They really don't make it easy. Do you want to ask your follow-up questions?
Oh, me? I mean, my question to him would be,
follow back
you know,
to him.
Say that again?
Follow-up questions back to him.
Oh yeah, no, my follow-up questions would be to him, like, did you get an advance? Was there a sample? Because this is another thing where it's like 7 months in terms of recoupment time doesn't seem very long. So it probably hasn't recouped, because you're talking about royalties now, and so if your advance was $5,000 to $10,000, who knows how the album did. So
I'm with
it's
you. It most likely
complicated.
didn't recoup. I found songs that are surprisingly big didn't recoup. Like, you need to generate millions and millions and millions of streams, like 30 or 20 million Spotify streams, to recoup your $5,000 advance at 1% or 2 or 3%.
Yeah, it's a little depressing. just seeing how massively, phenomenally successful an album has to be for you to generate any kind of royalty checks. I think a lot of producers have just not gotten I got a royalty check recently from Strange Music, and I was shocked. But then again, that's Strange Music, right? So it goes back to what you're saying about these major labels being these massive systems where there's just so much going on. Strange Music is a little more attentive to the needs of their artists and the collaborators.
But to specifically answer that guy's question about Interscope, you should reach out to the A&R who worked on your project, or whatever contact you have, and basically ask them who specifically to reach out to. It's most likely going to be the General Royalties Department at UMG. Like, all the different labels, Republic, Def Jam, Interscope, they have to reach out to the same royalties people in another place. And those people are very hard to get in touch with. And the people working at the label have the same problems. It's insane.
You got trolled for a situation a few months ago where you were demanding that a producer got paid for a project.
I don't even remember what you're referring to.
Someone released your phone number or something and told everyone to harass you.
Yep.
What was
that was
like?
Blueface's manager, Whack 100. He is the only one I've encountered who doesn't play like that. He plays at another level.
Did the producer ever get paid?
No, it was only $2,000. He put my phone number on his Instagram, where he has like 200,000 followers, and people blew up my phone, and that's the only L I've ever taken. That he won. He didn't have to pay $2,000.
Well, okay, I guess just troll the hell out of lawyers, and then you won't have to pay your producers. Also, on the flip side, you recently tweeted, "It's funny, judging by my Twitter, you would think I have a lot of enemies in music. In fact, just about every person who said they didn't like the way I do business or threatened to never work with me again later reached out and said they respected how hard I went for my clients." How did that feel?
Yeah, no, just after that happened the first time it happened was really crazy. But then you realize that every time you ask for more money, they're going to say you're making it so difficult, we're never going to work with you again. I mean, they never mean it. It's not in any of their control. Like, especially in hip hop, these artists are in the studio listening to tons of beats every night. It's not up to the A&R, the person at the label, to ever stop anything. So now whenever they do that, I roll my eyes at them. Whenever they say they'll never work with me again, they don't even mean it.
We're talking about fear at a really high level here, because producers are scared to death of being blackballed. It's a funny term, just because I don't know if the concern matches the reality. Definitely,
especially, say, God forbid, you offend one person in the music industry, you did something he didn't like. There's still infinity other people to reach out to. Like, worst case scenario.
I've certainly offended a lot of people in the music business by standing up for myself, and that was on me. That wasn't even on an attorney. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like my brand is just growing every year. Yeah, but there's a lot of fear, period, in the producer community. One, and I'm sure you get this question all the time. One major source of fear is getting beats stolen, or getting the copyright infringed on. Whether that means a rapper is stealing their beats and releasing them without their permission, or another producer is recreating their beats and selling them. Does that happen a lot? Do you see that a lot? What are the
So first, there's a lot of
risks of that?
people. The most obvious one is the people who are afraid to email beats because they're worried about someone stealing their beats. I mean, no one's going to take your beat and not pay you. That would be so obvious. And I guess no one's that stupid at the end of the day. And then as far as people recreating your beats, I mean, that's a thing. And I've dealt with it once. So I mean, I guess that is sort of legitimate, but it happens 1 out of 1,000 times. So, I mean, I wouldn't let it stop me.
Can you talk about that situation, or is that one of those things that's still kind of
still an ongoing matter? But yeah, it's an ongoing matter. Basically, clearly remade the beat, but guy's not cooperating. Long story short.
Got it. I guess denying is a good strategy, because a lot of people
Classic
give
strategy.
up. Yeah. Do most of your clients' placements go smoothly, or does it seem like there's always some kind of downside?
I would say most of them do go smoothly. As much as my Twitter is crazy, 98% of the placements that they get go smoothly, and there's just nothing to talk about. It's just not interesting. That's why I don't post about it. But yeah,
what's the most recent?
Negative, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, what's the most recent placement that went smoothly?
Honestly, so many of them. My clients on the low key project, even though the deluxe was 40 songs, they all got properly compensated in a timely manner. Can't complain. I'm happy with Warner Music / APG / Atlantic Records. They found a client's royalties in 1 day and paid him. That was an unreal experience compared to my dealings with UMG and the difficulty there.
Oh yeah, that's pretty amazing. What was I going to ask? So you represent and have represented a lot of producers who, in addition to getting these major placements, still continue to license.
Sorry, I have to grab a phone. I have to grab a charger real quick.
Oh no, you're good. Should I wait for the? I'll wait for the question. In the meantime, let's look around. Okay, so here's a follow-up question from the person who was asking about the Interscope royalties. He said the song itself has 500,000 streams. So based on what Adam said earlier, in order to recoup a $5,000 advance, that song would have to get millions of streams, it sounds like. So I don't know the math. There was some kind of royalty estimator that was sweeping the internet. I don't know if you saw that, Adam. A lot of people were talking about it, and I think it had something to do with the Kanye conversation. And it was just a really sobering look at how many streams it really took to get a person paid, just simply because the label is taking such a big amount of those royalties. So I don't know if you have anything to add to this. Oh, you're muted.
That was the record deal simulator. Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah. Just visualizing, seeing that visually really helped a lot. But yeah, I mean, they say Spotify streams, like 1 million streams is around $3,000 total. So just picture you're getting 3% of that.
Well, yeah, and to add insult to injury, you're not correct me if I'm wrong. You're not technically getting 3% of that whole pie, because that pie is split up into master royalties, and the master royalties the label's taking and then paying you the 3% out of that, and then there are mechanicals and.
It's my understanding that 3,000 was just the master side, but Totally. They say other people will give different estimates that include what you're talking about.
Got it. Yeah. Either way, it's complicated, and it's not. I cringe whenever I hear somebody say, "Oh yeah, you get X amount of dollars off of streaming." It's like, no, you have no idea. You don't, because you can't account for how many collaborators are involved. You can't account for what the label deal is with that individual artist, which affects how much the producer is getting paid. That's something that producers don't realize. We don't know that we're tied in to whatever deal the artist has with the label. So there's just a lot going on that we don't know, and so it helps to have somebody like you in our corner. But even then, we're barely scratching the surface. We're taking it kind of
Absolutely
situation by situation, right?
Yeah, I think you just realize that a lot of these situations end up playing out exactly the same, whether it's these different small variations. It's all the same sort of stuff at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I the last thing I want anybody who's watching this to think is that this is so overwhelming that you shouldn't try. It's overwhelming, but that just incentivizes learning more, and it incentivizes making learning and growing in terms of your business acumen as important as growing as a creative. But none of this should discourage anybody from trying and failing. I'm sure, Adam, you've seen a ton of producers fail and screw up and then pick themselves back up and sign a 6-figure publishing deal a couple years later.
Totally. All my clients have learned all these same lessons, have made all these same stupid mistakes, and now they're all literally inspirational stories. It's unreal.
So I had a situation where people are probably sick of me talking about this. I had a situation where I received from a producer a sample pack that the producer claimed that he created. But when I actually listened to the samples, and he was telling me, yeah, go ahead and use these samples, one of them was from Illmind. Of course, Illmind didn't know any of this was happening. And a lot of people just I shared the situation, and people were like, well, what's the big deal? It's just a sample. What is the risk in this kind of scenario?
Of being this kid who's passing off these samples as his own?
Or being the person who uses those samples not knowing who actually created those samples, because a lot of that is happening.
Oh my God, a lot of that is happening. Ask Brock from 808 Mafia how that happened with the Southside release he just put together. He said so much of that happened. But I mean, the risk is that this other producer who really owns these samples is going to come out of nowhere and try to get a piece of your song. So it's just another wrench in the situation. A lot of these, assuming a song is a producer and then a sample maker, if someone else is passing off the samples as their own, say they do a contract, say they get paid, and then the song comes out and the real sample maker hears it, it's going to be a mess to clear all that up, even if everybody cooperates.
And I feel like those situations are the damaging ones, more so than you standing up for yourself and saying, no, I want more points, or no, I want a bigger advance. This just looks really bad because
I never thought about it that way. Producers are so scared to stand up and ask for more money, but they're not afraid of passing someone else's music off as their own.
Yeah, and the consequences are so massive. I mean, I'm thinking in my head, if I had used that sample and gotten a placement off it, and Illmind is someone I've known for a long time, I mean, that would probably hurt my personal relationship with him. It would certainly cause a nightmare for whatever artist and whatever label that beat got placed on, and it would.
Yeah, even if it's not your fault, there's still that residual embarrassment and mess that you have to help clean up.
Oh, here's a hell of a question. Do you think it's necessary to have a lawyer for every placement after you do a few agreements and start to understand? Basically, he's asking, do you, after you do a couple of these, do you think you can start signing agreements without a lawyer looking at them?
Personally, I think so, but I've also found a lot of my clients and a lot of producers out there will have a lawyer basically to handle it for them. I would say most people are not also reading the contract and trying to fully understand it themselves when they really should, even if they're working with a manager and a lawyer, because how do you know if they're really doing a good job? But so basically to answer that question, I think so, but I've seen very few people actually try to do that themselves.
Yeah, and I think also to add to that, not every agreement's going to be the same. Even if it's from the same label, even if it's from the same kind of scenario as the last, who knows what could happen. That stuff scares me a little bit because there's always some ambiguity. Why do you ever read through a contract and say, oh my god, this is so unnecessary the way they worded this?
I mean, yes and no. It's interesting that you still feel that same sort of just not being comfortable, even having gone through way more than most of these kids.
For me, I wouldn't, because like for me, if I got an offer from I'll paint an imaginary scenario, hypothetical. Say a major label sends me an agreement and it's 3 percentage points and $5,000 advance, and it's going to be a big project, but I'm probably not going to be the single, so I'm probably not going to recoup anyway. I just don't want to be the person that says, you know what, I want a $10,000 advance and I want a point bump at 500,000 copies sold, because I'm sure it's going to reach that point, especially with all the streaming equivalents. Because I don't know how seriously, in my mind, how seriously is the label going to take? I'm talking to a lawyer. The lawyer knows I'm just a producer. I'm not a lawyer. How seriously are they going to take me?
Oh man, I mean, that's something that I guess that's getting into like the depressing part about the music industry for me, is that a lot of times my clients will be asking the same thing: hey, where's my money? Where's my money? And then I'll come in as the lawyer and say, where's my money? Boom, it comes right away. So there are people who just straight up don't respect people who are not lawyers, I guess, which is annoying. But I think if you just say what you mean confidently, like that's, I guess, my secret, just saying it confidently, I think they'll listen to you.
I mean, I certainly will do that when it's artist to artist, but once someone gets an attorney involved, I'm not talking to that guy. I'm not, or
No, I get it. Then
is.
they'll try to talk down to you and things like that. I get it.
Some people try it, and if I'm in the right mood, I'll just be like, okay, I don't care that you're a distributor. I'm gonna show you that I actually know what I'm talking about, and you're just being a dick. But and sometimes that works. But I never want to get in a situation where there's some kind of emotion or indignity injected into the conversation, because it's business at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. I guess that's what it comes down to for me when it's things like not paying for months and things like that. It comes down to the principle of it.
Yeah, there's principle, but you're not the guy that's gonna talk about your feelings. You're gonna be whereas a producer might, because they're the ones suffering.
True.
So switching gears, what is a production deal, and why don't you ever recommend a production deal?
So the production deal is basically when you see anyone signing to a bigger producer or a bigger artist. Basically, that bigger artist gets a lot of these deals are typically structured so that artist gets 25% of all of the money that you're bringing in, but they're not guaranteeing that they're actually going to do anything for you. I mean, the idea is that you sign to the bigger producer, you're going to get more placements through the bigger producer, but there's no guarantees, and he still gets a percentage. If all goes well, he's getting a percentage of stuff that you're doing yourself, and he's not even saying he'll manage you or anything. He's not claiming he will.
Yeah, I think Othello talked about this.
If you're going to give that sort of percentage, might as well give it to a manager who's actually going to have your back and help you sort out specific problems. But you can't rely on the bigger artists, the bigger producers signing to like actually have your back like that.
So I this was another controversy you started on Twitter. This was on October 11th. You tweeted, "Shout out to all the A&Rs at major labels and publishing companies who said their company was interested in signing my client, but it turns out only if the A&R could keep 20% of the deal from the company the A&R works at." One, what part of the deal were they trying to keep 20% of? And do you see this kind of thing happening a lot where producers who work with labels are actually managed by the same people who work at the label?
So those are two different questions. What I was bringing up was someone who works at a publishing company saying he'll bring you a publishing deal, but he keeps 20% of your deal as his finder's fee. But his company most likely doesn't know that. So
is that something that's just
itself?
Because I saw somebody's reply. I forget who it was, but they seemed like they had been in the music business for a while. They said this shouldn't be happening, and any A&R doing this should be fired. And I feel like I've seen that happen a lot.
Interesting, because I would say I haven't either. I just have definitely seen it a couple of times, but it is totally super sketchy to me for somebody who's working at one of these big corporate major labels or something.
Because I know some A&Rs will also wear the management hat, so they're bringing in their clients to their label projects, and so it's like they're getting paid twice.
So that's, I guess, not wrong to me. I guess that's sort of the idea. In music, a lot of people try to just plug themselves into these opportunities and then bring their people along with them in whatever way that is. But that's not, the first situation is stealing from a company. But in this other way, I don't know. I guess it gets into gray area when you really think about it.
Let's see.
But if that's my manager, I want him plugging me in.
Yeah, I want a manager that works for the label. That seems like a great situation for me. If I'm the producer who doesn't have that connection, though, I'm probably pretty frustrated. And I am a producer who doesn't have that connection.
Totally.
So I am frustrated. We're seeing a lot of producers who are successfully selling beats online, and we're seeing this growing number of producers who aren't even worried about major placements. And then when they get a major placement, they're not as thirsty for them. And so do you think the online beat licensing space is disrupting some of the fair treatment producers have traditionally experienced with major labels?
Totally. I absolutely do. A lot of my clients are specifically the kids who are living off these $50 beat leases. These placements that come in every once in a while for a couple $1,000. That doesn't make or break anything compared to literally what they're making through BeatStars.
So, do you feel like producers who are licensing beats online even understand that they're disrupting the whole industry? And maybe as a second question, do you think that if they could harness all that power, could they change the practices in the music business?
I would say ultimately no and no. I think they don't realize how much they are disrupting it until they come across the situations themselves and they realize that they don't need these major placements. So when they can tell a big artist who gave them a lowball offer, then they could have the freedom to walk away from that. It's amazing. But, and then, what was your second question? Sorry.
So if all that power were harnessed, so you take, a ton of influential producers who are, known for or successfully making an income solely off of online beat sales, and you brought them all together to kind of set some standards of fair practices with regard to how they deal with labels. Could they start changing the landscape of how producers are treated?
Man, I think that's another deep question of how the music industry got how it is. Part of it is because it's so complicated. I mean, you don't realize how much power you have until you go through it, like I was just talking about. So I think no matter what, it takes a certain amount of experience versus just having these other streams of revenue. You actually need to go through it.
Your phone was cutting out quite a bit just now. I don't know if you're in a different position, but
Can you hear me?
yeah, it's a little choppy.
Oh no. Is this good?
I think that might sound better. Okay, so here's a good question, because it opens up another can of worms about what lawyers do. I guess the real question is, do you litigate?
I personally don't litigate. I mean, no one's going to jail for any of this, but litigation may be necessary when there's a lot more money at stake. That you may need to go to court if there's really a lot of royalties or a major song you didn't get paid for or something like that.
So at the point at which, say you're in a situation where the labels just haven't paid or whatever, your client's experiencing something that's unfair to them, and the people that need to respond are just done responding. They've cut off all communication. What's the next step? Is it litigation?
It's just figuring out how to apply the pressure. And considering most of the things that I deal with are only worth like a few $1,000s, litigation is not worth it whatsoever. So that's why I go to things like threatening a takedown. We'll take down the music if you don't want to pay. 99% of the time, they pay right away because they don't want the song down, and they didn't think that you really take it that far. Or you could claim 100% of the song, so nobody gets paid. That's another way to apply the pressure until they sort it out and pay you your fee.
So let's kind of talk about those two options, because those are really like final options, right? You don't want to just you don't want to take a song down just because someone hasn't responded to your email in a day.
Right. This is definitely the last resort after following up for weeks and weeks, and it's really shows that they have no intention of getting this done, or they'll say they'll get it done eventually. But I mean, what's that?
So then, what's the main mechanism for getting a song taken down?
Is a lot of the times I go through Spotify's copyright infringement form and just write what happened. I'm the producer of this song. They released it without my permission. I never got paid. I need to take this down, and they do.
So
the other thing is to do a proper DMCA takedown.
Okay, so you could go through Spotify and get a song taken down using their copyright infringement form, even if that song is on a major project?
Yep.
I learned something.
But usually just the threat of it. Yeah.
You said usually the threat just that the threat of doing that
usually the threat
tends to work?
Done.
Okay, got it.
99% of the time. I've had to send a good amount of threats, but I've only had to file less than a handful of actual takedowns.
And then you file a takedown. What happens? Do they pay and get the song back up, or is that just a wash?
Every time they paid, and they paid it immediately and called freaking out because they didn't think I would actually do it.
Okay. What was the second thing you said that you would do? Oh, file a DMC. I got it. Yeah. So what's the difference?
That's serving a proper legal notice on the label that they have to take it down themselves. And then, or you could go after them for copyright infringement if they don't. Both of those work equally.
So with regard to litigation, right? Like let's say the song generated a bunch of money already before the takedown, and your client deserves that, but they're not getting it. How expensive is taking a label to court over something like this?
We're talking like $10,000 minimum. Like you could probably get a lawyer for a few $1,000s to draft all the legal papers and sort of escalate your threat to show like, all we have to do is drop it in the mail, and then we have a lawsuit. That works a lot of the time. But yeah, the money amount needs to be serious if you're really going to court.
Because I hear all the time people talking about, oh, someone stole your beat from YouTube, sue them. Oh, we lost item. Damn. All right. Well, we were at our end anyway. Shout out to everyone that tuned in. Next week is Thanksgiving, but there will be a session, and I actually asked people what they wanted to see from me, and a lot of people asked me to break down how I created a particular beat, which I think I labeled as a Rick Ross type beat, something kind of soulful. And so, no, it's not me making turkey. I'm sorry. It's me making this beat and breaking it down, and I think I'm gonna actually go from breaking down a beat to explaining my process of creating a beat. So hopefully you tune in for that. It will be pre-recorded, and this will also be archived. All of our sessions are archived. So every Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and of course Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have these free music mentorship programs right here, powered by BeatStars. Again, check out Dream Life's new beat tape, As the Night Falls. Just go on any of your streaming clients and listen. And then also sign up for reminders for all of these amazing sessions and shows and opportunities that BeatStars offers its members. www.beatstars.world/live. And I'll catch you next week. Happy holidays. Have a safe and productive weekend. Peace, everyone.